what is the first thing on our agenda?
Certainly, Ms. Devine. We'll start with your committee members. I see that Sue Berkowitz is present, Councilwoman Allison Horatio, Brianna Brennan,
Brenna. Hey, Brenna.
Brian Grady, Dr. Grady, Dylan Gunnels. The screen keeps moving, but I'm trying to catch up with it. Ivory Matthews, Jeffrey Armstrong, Jennifer Moore, Lala Anna Sauls, Regina Williams, Tanya Isaac, and I wrote down some other names. I don't know if I said Jennifer Moore. If I missed Mr. Jim,
Jim Zeke.
Zeke, thank you. And if I did not call your name, if you want to announce yourself, you can do so at this time. That is your roll call. The first item on the agenda would be the approval of minutes. They were sent out on Sunday, so I certainly understand if there's a need to defer that approval. But if not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting? And if so, is there anyone who is in a position to make a motion for approval of those minutes?
What baby that?
Motion to approve, Jennifer Moore.
Second, Lala Anna Sauls.
Okay, it's been properly seconded by Jennifer Moore, seconded by Lala Anna Sauls. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from September 2020, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And I'll clarify that I apologize. That was August 11th.
August 11th. Okay. Oh, yes, because we didn't meet last month. I apologize.
Yes,
Great. Thank you so much. All righty. I did want to say for introduction purposes that we have one more new committee member, and I want to just recognize Regina Williams as one of our community leaders, and I've asked her to also be with us as a member of this committee. Regina, would you take a second and introduce yourself to everybody and give your background as it relates to this issue, please?
Okay, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hi, I'm Regina E. Williams, and I have lived in the Columbia area for all of my life, 56 years, graduate of the Richland One schools, all of them. And I am president of the Booker Washington Heights Neighborhood Association, which encompasses Palmetto Terrace, the Colony Apartments, and North Point Apartments, and also Bayberry, and also the Howell Court community and the housing area behind St. John Baptist Church. So I'm very familiar with the woes that may be encountered, as also I've encountered many woes with affordable housing, even as an educator, just retired after 30 years. So this is near and dear to my heart as I work with the children who we send to school and try to bridge that gap between home and school.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Regina. We appreciate you being here with us today and your willingness to serve on this committee. Also want to welcome back Tanya Isaac. Tanya missed the last meeting and she has had a few challenges, but we are so happy to see you here. Tanya, thank you for being here, and our continued, let's as a committee continue to lift Tanya up in our prayers as she is bouncing back very, very well from surgery. But thank you so much for being here. Tanya, I know you missed the last couple meetings, so did you want to say anything to us before we jump into the work? And I'll catch you up on everything offline too.
Yes, just hello everyone. Glad to be back. It's a slow recovery, but I'm doing great. I have a lot of help thanks to the group that we're dealing with NYC ICI, Regina, Mrs. Chris really helped out my family. So just thank you all for lifting me up in your prayers, and I'm glad to be back to go head on with these issues and help my community to get better.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, so I was able to pull up my agenda. Eric, I see that we've deferred it for the last couple months regarding the mission of the task force. Do you still have that in here? What I proposed as the mission?
Yes,
Erica, do you have that? Can you read that?
Give me one moment.
And what we can do, I want to make sure that as we put that out, if people are ready, we've put it out before. If people are ready to discuss that as the official mission, I know now all committees have kind of met. I know some committees have some questions, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time today on committee reports. But if there are any thoughts on the mission statement, I want to make sure that we at least try and start moving that forward, so that if we need to expand the mission, if we need to be more succinct to communicate with the masses as to what our marching orders are, I want us to have that conversation. And Erica, if it's not readily available, because I know I put you on the spot, don't worry about it.
I just had to
Okay.
pull it up, but I do have it. If
Okay.
you're ready. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The proposed mission back in August is as follows. This committee shall gather and address issues surrounding the need for more quality, affordable housing in the Midlands area, with the primary focus on finding solutions to impediments in providing more affordable housing options in Columbia. And I'll see if I can share that on the screen for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tamika, I'd like to propose a suggested change.
Yes, Jim.
And that would be after finding, maybe putting in some language that would read finding and implementing.
I agree with that. I think that, so we would
Just
say,
somehow that if we find a solution, we can carry it out and maybe see it through. I'd hate to recommend a solution, not have the wherewithal to follow up on it and get it in front of council and work to have it implemented.
okay.
Can you all see it on your screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I agree with that. So we'll make that addition. Does anybody else have any comments regarding the mission statement? Whether or not you feel it's too vague, it doesn't include everything that you believe we're tasked to look at. I agree with Jim that implementing is the key to this. Identifying a solution is one thing, implementing it is really where we want to focus. All right, if there are no additional thoughts on this, do I have a motion to approve the task force mission with the amendment of adding and implementing after finding on the mission statement?
Move to approve.
Okay, that's Ms. Lila Anna Sauls. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that? Was that Julianne?
That was Sue.
Sue. That was Sue. Okay, Sue Berkowitz, second. All those in favor of the approval of the task force mission signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of the discussion today. So now all of the committees have met. Thank you so much for committee. I know everybody on here is extremely busy and wear a lot of hats. And so you all have met and discussed. I know that there are probably some questions that have come out of the committee reports. And so we'll also address those as well. But I want to just start with, I think we've got Sue first. And actually, we have now, I think I mentioned this last or in August, but we have combined the legal and zoning because those issues overlap so much. And then we also know based on the accessibility committee's meeting that some of theirs will overlap as well, but we're going to keep that separate for right now. But so legal and zoning, we have co-chairing the legal and zoning committee, Sue Berkowitz and Lala Anasal. So I'm going to yield the floor to Sue and Lala for a report from their committee.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And we were a little slow getting started, but I think we have a pretty ambitious agenda now for this small subcommittee. Anybody else who might be interested in participating, we would really appreciate it. We're a mighty committee of 4 for 2 of the topics. I don't understand why legal and zoning just does not rock everybody's boats out there, but we appreciate those who are participating with us. First thing we're going to do is an assessment of the ordinances or zoning laws that are out there that are impacting or may impact affordability of housing. And we appreciate the City of Columbia. We got a list forwarded to us. It was actually much smaller than I had thought it would be. And we're going to do an analysis of that to see how it does impact affordability, or if any changes were made, if they would need to be nuanced so that it didn't open up changes to allow more expensive housing and not get to the mission we're actually looking for. And we appreciate Krista for putting that together. And it may be that, Krista, you might want to participate on what we're doing so you don't end up with something from us that you might find untenable or unworkable. So we would love to have you join us with this. The other pieces we looked at is we did all get the link about what's going on in Greenville with motel and SROs, and we want to do a deep dive into that to see how it is impacted by both the zoning ordinance. Look at how can this be done, not necessarily just for rapid rehousing and dealing with homelessness, not that we don't think that's important, but how this could be something that could be used for long-term affordable housing for individuals. We're also going to look at what the Bailey bill, it is an incentive for rehab and revitalization, but we need to be looking at that, whether it would really be a practical solution to really increasing affordable housing. We're going to look at voluntary abatements and community benefit agreements and see how that fits so that we don't do it in a way to put the City of Columbia in legal jeopardy and having lots of challenges, but could be useful, and with clawback provisions and monitoring so that in fact, if there are going to be what should be affordable housing units that are built, that they do what they're supposed to do and not have potential developers utilize some of these benefits and then not do what ultimately is the goal, which is to get affordable housing, and look at what best practices. And then the other piece that we're going to be looking at is housing court and the eviction crisis. And we know that we're going to have a presentation when we have our next meeting set up with folks from Charleston, where they are doing housing court and looking at that and recognizing there's a real balance for landlords and tenants to be able to make sure that we don't continue to use evictions as a form of collection, but also recognize how to putting a financial burden on landlords. So we have a full plate, and like I said, if there's anybody who wants to join us, please just let Lila, Ann, and I know. And I also want to ask Lila Ann if she feels that covered what we had discussed last week.
That was perfect. I had my list in front of me. You nailed it, Sue. So we're good. And I also want to give a shout out to Brian. Every time we said we need more information on, Brian would say, I'll do that. and he did it with such glee that that it was it was incredible. So he is our data guru on this committee. So thank you, Brian,
Thank
publicly.
you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Does anybody have any questions for the Legal and Zoning Committee, or are there any things that you guys think are areas of consideration? I think they covered a lot of things, so there's a lot to, say grace over right now. But if anybody thinks there's something burning that maybe hasn't been discussed, I see Regina's putting in the chat that she'd like to join the committee. So thank you, Regina. Welcome. But are there any questions for Lala Anna or Sue, or are there any issues that you think are zoning or legal related that have not been mentioned that you would like the committee at least to talk about considering?
And I would offer just shoot an email to Sue or myself, and we'll make sure it gets on our committee agenda, even if you don't want to serve on the committee or be a part of it. And we're happy to take it up when we meet. So
great, cool. All righty. Okay, well then our next report out will be from Jennifer Moore, who is the chair of our partnerships committee. And so Jennifer, I'm going to yield the floor to you at this time.
All right, thank you, and good morning. So Partnership Committee, we are a strong, mighty committee, like Legal and Zoning. We have Gregory Sprouse, Mary Louise Resch, John Andile, Dylan Gunnels, and then Lee DeForth from city staff. So thank you, everybody. If anyone is interested in joining us, please do. We'd love to have more at the party. So we've met. What we talked about was a few things. We really see the role of the Partnership Committee being a support to the other committees and the overall mission of the task force. So we really feel like our work is to leverage networks of partners in the community that have an interest in affordable housing so that we can bring voices to the table and then make sure that we can build good, solid support for the work of the committee as it's introduced. So some of that work is that we will do some mapping of organizations in the Columbia area and the greater Midlands that we feel like have a strong interest in housing. So looking at those common veins so that we can build that network. And then one thing that we wanted to do today is kind of just hear the report outs from the committees itself so that we can identify ways that we can support. So again, if there are ways that any of the committees feel like that we can support, let us know. We have met once and we'll get together after this meeting. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions or input that any of our task force members have for the Partnerships Committee? Okay, hearing none, I am going to recognize Julianne Avon, who is chairing our Accessibility Committee, to do a report out. And Julianne, I will yield to you at this time. Oops. I'm looking at chat. Julianne, are you on? Y'all aren't seeing Julianne? Okay. Oh, I hope nothing came up. Okay. So are you there, Julianne?
No, ma'am. Someone had posted something in the chat, but that wasn't her.
Okay. Okay.
Mary Louise, she had to leave early for an emergency. I did want to note that.
Okay. All righty. Well, I will do the report out from Julianne because I did join the committee meeting for the Accessibility Committee. And so the Accessibility Committee met yesterday. Present for that committee was myself, Julianne, Lester Young, Kimberly Tissot from Able SC, and oh gosh, and another young lady, I think also with Able SC. For those of you who might not be familiar with Able SC, they are the statewide advocacy group for people with disabilities. And so we met and we just talked about understanding that, trying to figure out the different needs of special populations that may have additional impediments to access to affordable housing, in addition to the ones that as a committee we've overall discussed regarding affordability and the availability. I apologize, you guys. You have Superman in the background yelling. Shh, 1 second. Okay, hold on 1 second. And so in our conversation yesterday, y'all, bear with me. This is a huge example of work-life integration. I don't have any Pringles. Come on. I'm sorry. Okay. So the accessibility committee identified that the special populations right now that we need to identify the impediments are formerly incarcerated citizens returning to the community, as well as people with physical and mental disabilities, and then also our growing senior population. And so we kind of discussed initially, okay, Regina said that's our other area of interest. We initially talked about the need to make sure, I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna still talk to you guys, but I'm gonna give you a nicer picture than me walking through the kitchen. And so we talked about understanding the additional impediments that this group that these populations have. Some of the things that we discussed was when you have apartment complexes or affordable housing, that there's a development of handicap accessible units, and it's a smaller population of the overall units. And so there are some guidelines nationally about making sure that you have units that are universal, that can be utilized, so that folks with physical challenges may not have to wait for a smaller portion of those units to become available. And so Kim will be doing some best practices research and be presenting that to the committee. Lester is going to take on discussing from the formerly incarcerated people group population and look at best practices throughout the country that can add what some things that are being proposed to help the transition back into the population and access to housing. And just for the committee's information, Lester shared a personal story as to when he was released from prison six years ago. He was unable to rent because of his felony conviction. And so he said he was blessed that he was in a position to actually purchase a home, but most people returning after being incarcerated are not in that position. And so if there's no rental units available to them because of their conviction, it makes it really hard. So that we'll present some best practices there. And then of course, Mercy, Julianne has some thoughts about making sure that we have supportive services in the community that help with affordable housing for people with mental disabilities. So that committee will continue to look at best practices and make a presentation. They will likely be wanting to have a joint meeting with legal and zoning, because a lot of these issues that were raised will tend to be legal and maybe require some recommendations of some legislative changes. So that is a report from that committee. If anybody has any questions for me or some input on that, please let me know.
Tamika, I would like to be a part of that accessibility. I think I told you that in the beginning. I just wanted to wait till after my surgery so I could be fully available. I definitely want to be a part of that. And I know another issue as far as my community goes is very low. Even though we have the transit with the bus, is still very low for people because they just don't have the funds to get on the bus and continue to ride the bus throughout the week. So I definitely want to be a part of that accessibility community.
Okay, wonderful, Tanya. Thank you so much. I do recall that. I knew you were. I'm just surprised to even see you today. So I didn't want to bombard you, but we're going to make sure that you get that notice and that you're part of the meeting. So thank you so much for that. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about the Accessibility Committee report out? Okay. All right, well then now I'm gonna ask Brenna if Brenna would make a presentation regarding the public education and awareness. And of course, this one I think is a good sized committee. So Brenda, if you let us know who was on your committee and then give us your report, please.
Sure. Okay. We have Allison, Ivory, Jeffrey, Shayla, and myself on that committee. And again, if anyone wants to join, they're more than welcome. We have met once and then had a series of email strings back and forth. So some things from our meeting, we want to start by building local support to change the negative and often misunderstood public image of people who need and require affordable housing, and accomplish this by attending neighborhood meetings, which a lot of neighborhood meetings are now on Zoom and other WebEx platforms, and convey information about the people who live in affordable housing, where in the neighborhoods, dispelling myths about affordable housing, property values, crime, etc. And we really came across 3 objectives with a micro and macro approach. So understanding the definition of affordable housing, looking at this with community understanding and community members, as well as the zoning committee, to dispel the misconceptions of projects as the only affordable housing, the idea of renting versus owning affordable housing, and how we need to balance those out. And then the second one would be who needs affordable housing. So working with the accessibility committee and the financing committee, addressing the stigma of who lives in affordable housing. So the idea that first responders, essential workers, et cetera, all qualify for affordable housing is something that I think a lot of people often forget. And then looking at political and employer reach out in conjunction with the partnership committee. So helping local officials understand the need for affordable housing, what goes into affordable housing in their districts, what affordable housing they may have or lack thereof, who utilizes affordable housing, and then reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and other employers to understand affordable housing as it relates to other aspects of life, including food security, childcare, transportation. So really understanding that housing is a basis for such integration within a community. So representatives from all neighborhoods and groups help kind of develop a message and images that can be used for digital media, posters, ads, et cetera, across the community. And then one last thing is the public education campaign to develop messages and images, communicate in 3 main elements. So people who need affordable housing are varied in their background and circumstances. Housing is fundamental for people to become successful community members, and the availability of housing in various configurations and price levels is important to really building stronger, more vibrant, diverse communities. So some images that we kind of talked about are an image of like a teacher who can't afford to live in the community she works, a senior on a fixed income who's facing rental increases, a child who's forced to move and change schools as his family moves from apartment to apartment. So really kind of changing the idea of who is in affordable housing and needs affordable housing. And that's it. And I talked way too fast.
No, you were great. That's wonderful, Brenna. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Bernadette or on the their report, or any issues that you want to raise or comments about what they've discussed that you want them to consider?
This is Allison, and I'm on this committee, and I love it. I will say that, sorry, excuse me for clearing my throat. I will say that one of the other pieces that we kind of talked about, but didn't come up in this report, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but is the idea, especially when we're talking to neighborhood meetings, a lot of people think that if there's affordable housing in their immediate neighborhood, that somehow that will cause their property values to decrease. And there was a book that was brought to our attention about a neighborhood, I believe in New Jersey, who dealt with this exact thing. And, you know, there was a study over time to show, hey, you know, in fact, because people can afford to live where they are, they can afford to maintain their homes, all of those kinds of things. So it actually helps to improve, at least maintain, if not improve, property values. So I think a lot of people are very scared of that because, and sort of rightfully so, because a lot of people's family wealth is in their real estate. So I just wanted to kind of add that to the general conversation.
Thank you, Allison. That's good. And if anybody remembers what that book is, if you put it in the chat or send it to me, we'll make sure that we get that reference out to everybody. That sounds like an interesting read. Okay. All right. And so Mr. Bonner was unable to join us today, but I got an email, Dr. Grady, that he asked you to report for your committee. I hope he told you that. So I'm going to put you on the spot to report out for that committee and add some information. And Erica he did send a written report too, and she's put that up on the screen.
All right. And so first off, I actually am familiar with the book, so I put the title in the chat there. So as you can see here, I don't have much to report at this point. As you can see there, Mr. Barner passed along this information about Senate Bill 207, which was passed, which essentially increases it provides for property tax relief for affordable housing that is owned by a nonprofit organization. So that's certainly, anything that reduces the cost of getting housing built or preserved is certainly a positive. So certainly something to consider. The one piece of legislation that he also asked me to speak about that I can be a little more authoritative about is House Bill 3998, which I believe I discussed in my last presentation to this task force, but is the state level equivalent to the low income housing tax credit. So if somebody successfully applies for tax credits from SC Housing, every federal tax credit dollar will be matched with $1 of state tax credit. So against any form of taxes that may be owed to the state of South Carolina. So essentially what that does is allows us to stretch our resources further because it allows for more equity to come along with existing deals. So in our competitive 9% tax credit round, we would anticipate that this would substantially increase the number of applications we're able to fund. We've already seen in the 4% round, so tax credits that are matched with tax exempt bond authority. We were able to reopen our application round last month for that. And for the first time that anyone around here can remember, we received more applications than we are actually able to fund under the amount of bond cap that that is allocated to multifamily developments here at SC Housing. So that is very encouraging. That means we have 2 competitive programs in the tax credits now. And again, it means that we are able to get much more affordable housing financed. So that is certainly encouraging. So it's sort of a double-edged sword if you're looking at it from a specific, city perspective, where it means that there's a lot more money that can be deployed for affordable housing development through SC Housing, but it also means a lot more people are showing interest in it. So there's going to be more competition for those resources. So that's all I really have. But happy to answer any questions and take any feedback and pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Grady or any thoughts that they would like the committee, the financing committee, to think about or consider?
I do.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Regina. Go ahead, Regina.
Is that Tanya? Yes. We're probably on.
Yeah, go ahead. You probably want to say something. Go ahead.
With the tax credits, I'm concerned and wondering how we can look at the upkeep and maintenance of the units once the tax credits are allowed. What we're finding is that there are people who are getting tax credits for building multifamily affordable housing, but the maintenance, the upkeep, you have horrible mold issues, horrible sewage issues coming through the coming up into the bathrooms and the sinks of these homes, these apartments. And they're getting tax credits, or they're asking for tax credits, but this is how our people are living. And these are the children that we are sending to school. And what can we do about this? Because all I keep hearing is, well, it's hard to get the owners to come to the table. They're mostly out of town. And I keep getting, well, that's not really a HUD problem, or that's not, who do we involve in this so that this type of stuff can stop?
Yeah. So obviously, there are a number of different providers of affordable housing. So I can't, I'd be happy to take any details you're able to provide about what properties we're talking about, what the exact issues are. If they are being monitored by our agency, we will certainly take that very seriously, because if a property receives tax credits, for the first 15 years, they are supposed to be inspected on a regular basis. And ultimately, if we find that they're substandard and the owner does not address the issue, we can take all of their previous tax credits back. So that represents a substantial financial incentive for them to do that, to comply. So we have our tax credit program. We also monitor some Section 8 properties on behalf of HUD through our contract administration program. And if they fall in that category, again, we would be the point of contact. Certainly, if it's Columbia Housing Authority or someone else is the owner or operator or manager, there's nothing that our agency can do directly. But I would certainly encourage you to send all of that information to me. I will make sure it gets to the right people here at SC Housing. And if any of those properties are being overseen by us, we are happy to get very involved. So, yes. So please follow up with me.
And Regina, I would add, remember you and I talked about that. Let's get together a list, actually. So I got a text from someone who's watching the meeting online, and they had a similar issue. And apparently there's even a press conference about a property today about mold issues and some other things. I'll share that with you, Brian, offline. I don't know if you guys oversee that, but that's something I think that's consistently come up. Is I think people don't understand the if it's tax credit, if it's affordable housing, is there something that oversees the maintenance and upkeep? So what I was going to do, I wrote that down. Sue and Lala Anna, that might be something we might need to add to the legal and zoning, because maybe just even understanding what things potentially either the city and the county can do as far as maintenance or overseeing maintenance for things that might not be tax credit. And then Brian, maybe you're on that committee as well, so maybe just pulling you in on what are the as far as the properties, what are the governing aspects to make sure that they're brought up to code. And then Ivory, you may want to chime in as well, but we'll make sure that we loop you into those conversations. But that's related to what we're doing. But I think that there's probably a deeper dive that we need to do on that. So we'll get together on that offline.
Thank you.
And Regina, I'll offer that, and it's interesting. I think you just mentioned Ivory, Brian, myself, Sue. We were also in a meeting with a couple of state reps, 2 weeks ago, talking about the same issue statewide as far as holding landlords accountable who receive any sort of HUD funding. So whether it's voucher driven, Section 8, doesn't matter. The bottom line is kind of piecing together the roadmap back to who is responsible for making sure the dwelling is safe and habitable for those who are for the tenant. So Regina, it is on the radar, but it's also trying to simplify it and help people understand who to go to for that assistance. So we'll look at it in our next committee meeting.
Also,
And
without fear of retaliation, I think
yes,
that's going to
thank you,
be
Regina.
very, very, very important. That's the problem now that our
Yeah,
people our tenants are facing.
yeah. And I would like to add, to that as well before we end the conversation on that. With the inspections, I'm not sure how they go about doing it, but I noticed from the last inspection we had, ever since then, their focus is pretty much on the outside. They put up the blinds, they go around and make sure the yards are clean, and I'm not sure who picks the apartments that they go in, but strategically, I've noticed that the apartments that they're being picked are the apartments that people are pretty much fixing things on their own. I know they have picked a young lady around here who works very hard, an apartment to be on that list, trying to see the apartments that are in the worst conditions. So that is another reason why you all are not aware of the actual issues that are going on inside the apartments. If they could find a better way to get into these apartments and actually view the ones that actually have problems, so they'll know exactly the problems that exist inside these apartments. And if we have had retaliation from the management companies to a couple of young ladies for calling HUD on them. So that is, like Regina said, that is one of the biggest problems that we're having out here.
So ladies, well noted. And what we'll do is I will work with the two of you guys, maybe just get a list of different areas, different apartments that you guys are concerned about, and even maybe some specific circumstances. And then between the folks that we've named, we'll talk about that and whether that needs to be, in zoning and legal, or whether that is, it's really not a financing issue, because the financing would be something else, but depending on the type of financing probably depends on who oversees it. So I think we all hear that. Brian, Ivory, Lala Anna, and Sue, let's the five of us kind of get together once I get the information from Regina and Tanya and the young lady who's texting me now, and see if we can kind of wrap our arms around how we're going to put that specific issue on this task force committee's or this task force's mission. Okay, well, any other questions, comments, concerns regarding the financing committee, or did that discussion bring up anything else that someone wants to bring up before we move to announcements?
I just wanted to add, I'm sorry, I put on my video and but still kept my muting off. I just wanted to say, I do think that with what we're going to be looking at as far as evictions and that whole process, that some of this may have some real overlap, because we get a lot of those concerns articulated to us as well as a legal office. So I think that this would be a great conversation to have, and it would be wonderful to be able to think about how to bring in a more holistic approach to all of this.
And Allison, are you still on? Would you be willing to meet with us as well? Because there's probably some properties that are not in the city that will need some county on that as well.
Yes, you can loop me in on that. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And Allison, I think also just the whole issue of housing court, because it is it's the state laws, but the magistrates are all county based. It might be helpful to have you on for those purposes as well.
That makes sense. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we can move to announcements. I did want to share something just for you guys, to give you guys a heads up. This isn't under the auspice of this task force, but it's very closely aligned to what we're doing and what we hope to get out of this. So you guys know, you all were gifted. I think, Regina, I got to get you your book. Hopefully everybody, or Shanique might have got you one. I hope everyone still has their copy of Color of Law and have had an opportunity to read it. If you haven't had an opportunity to read it, I have learned that there is an audiobook, so you can download that and listen. But y'all know I've mentioned that to you guys several times. I'm very very interested in the concepts of that book and how it relates to, where we are as the Midlands area and where we need to go. And so with that said, I have enlisted the help of the library, Historic Columbia, University of South Carolina, with Professor Todd Shaw and Dr. Bobby Donaldson, as well as former City of Columbia Councilwoman Ann Sinclair. And we've kind of been working together as a collective group to talk about the issues of the color of law, and have decided to work together on a community-wide book club, so to speak, around the book, and a discussion of the topics in the book. And so we are hoping to start that in December. And so I'm gonna make sure that I get that to all of you guys, because I would love for all of you to be a part of it, not just as participants to listen, but also in our work here for this task force, because what we hope to come out of this community listening session around the book will be real proactive strategies and recommendations on how do we address years of government policies that have segregated our communities and left some communities out. So I'm really excited about this, but probably the most exciting part about this is, thanks to a grant from Central Carolina Community Foundation, the library has secured the author, Richard Rothstein, to actually make a presentation on the book here in Columbia. So that will happen in January. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Once we finalize the dates of all the sessions, I know Richard Rothstein is January 21st, so I'll go ahead and tell you guys that. But once we finalize the dates and the agenda, I hope that you guys can participate. Bobby Donaldson has come up with some really great local examples of gentrification and redlining and displacement of lower wealth communities. So I think it's going to be really powerful, but really eye-opening as far as what we as a community can kind of do to make sure that we are establishing policies that are more equitable to our community. So just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm super excited. So any other announcements? I know, Jim, you had one. You shared with me something exciting that Charleston is doing. Do you want to share that in announcements?
Well, I do, and it is exciting. They're putting to their voters where they can actually vote on a referendum to establish a housing trust fund, which is what our groups propose for the Midlands area. We've done a lot of investigation across the country, and we know trust funds work. There's over 800 trust funds in existence, and those that have a dedicated source of funding, which I think the Midlands could do, they've had tremendous success. You can go to Charlotte, our immediate neighbor to the north, and they've had over 50, I want to say 50 million committed to their trust fund to develop affordable housing. And we're hoping that that's on the financing radar. I was just going to send you a email to make on joining that group to push forward with some form of trust fund. In the presentations we've heard, trust fund has come up in every one of them in some form. So it's exciting news for Charleston. Our group's been involved with that area for over 3 years now trying to develop a trust fund. So we're excited that it's finally on the radar and that voters will be actually able to determine if it's something that they'd like to implement.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So Jim, this will be the November 3rd ballot?
From what we've read, it is November 3rd, correct?
Okay. All right. So we'll watch and see how that goes. So thank you for sharing that. We've got a few more minutes before we adjourn. So just want to make sure, does anybody else have any announcements? Okay. Seeing none, so the last thing on our agenda is the next meeting. If there is not an objection, what I would like to suggest, our next meeting would normally be scheduled for November 10th. And I would suggest that we actually forgo a full task force meeting and allow committees to meet. You can meet on that day and time since this is kind of already blocked off, or at another time that's amenable for all of you guys. But I think right now all of our committees have done amazing work, but now it's time for us to kind of dig deep. So I'm going to work Krista, and I don't know if Gloria's on, but I'm going to work with staff, Krista and Gloria, and we'll make sure that there's a staff support for the committees. So we'll do that. I know Lee is already serving on one. I think Krista would be well suited to help the legal and zoning. But outside of that, I'll work with staff on that. And so we'll get that done within the next 2 weeks. And so if between, now and mid-November, if the committees could meet, we'll forego our November 10th meeting, and then we will meet again in December, and that would be December 8th. Are there any objections to that?
No, ma'am. Ms. Devine, this is Gloria. I've been listening to all the committee reports. They've been excellent, and I'm happy to talk to you about which ones that you believe will be best served based on my role as the Director for Community Development. But they're all great, so I look forward to talking to you about which ones would be best for me to serve on. Thank you.
Okay, great, cool. Okay, so if there is nothing else that for the good of the order, I've monitored the chat. I know some folks have already said, yes, I want to be on that committee. Yes, I want to be on that. I respect all of you guys' time. So my ask has only been that you guys serve on at least one subcommittee. But if you guys want to serve on more than one, if you want to serve on all of them, we welcome you to do that. So if you didn't put it in the chat, email me or email the committee chairs directly. Yes, baby. Okay. No, I'm on my phone. Okay. Okay, mommy's almost finished. So if you could email me or email directly, the committee chairs will get the committees to meet in November, and then we will come together back in December, okay? So if there is nothing else, we are going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all so much for your help and your support, and we just looking forward to the exciting work that comes out of this committee.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.